bro, your favorite character is a liar and a fraud, and they're gonna cook him. Yeah, I said it. Yeah. All right, never mind. We start with Shanks and Gabon, and surprisingly, they're talking about Ace. So, basically, Gabon says that at some point within the past 10 years since Roger was executed, he met Garp, and Garp told him that Roger had a son. We don't really get the specifics, like did Garp go, hey, his name's Ace, I'm raising him here, this, that, and other. We just know that Gabon knows that Ace exists. That's about it. So then Shanks is like, well, if the captain has a kid, then I like have a younger brother. And this is like not really confirmation of, but like because we really already knew this, but Gabon is basically just like, yeah, you and Buggy were like our kids, our as in him, Rayleigh, and Roger. And it's pretty clear that like in the parent kind of sitch, that Roger was Shanks's favorite parent. So I think that's pretty cool. That's pretty funny. And here we actually get a potential theory as to why Shanks was at Fuchsia Village in the first place. But let's put the brakes on that. We'll circle back around to that because we want to continue with the flow of the chapter. So we actually switch scenes to Oust Castle. I think it means West Castle. So I'm just gonna call it West Castle. We switch scenes to West Castle, and we finally get to this scene from chapter 1152. I'm gonna reference 1152 a lot here just because it's really relevant. It's this like essentially it's the same chapter from a different perspective, so I'm gonna reference it a few times here. So if you want to pull that up, that's not a bad idea. But we get that establishing shot where Loki is coming in, and the guard is like, Loki, and he kicks him in his face because like, why? Like, bro, I live here. Stop tripping. And then we cut inside to the throne room, and we finally get a hint at how Emu's covenant abilities work. So what we get a glimpse at here inside the castle is that Emu's abilities, the covenant abilities, once you receive an order, when you have the deep sea covenant, which is the middle tier, you have the shallows as the bottom, the deep sea as the middle, and the abyssal as the high end. Once you get the deep sea covenant, when you receive orders from Emu, it seems that it starts to rot your mind, and it ultimately begins to change who you are as a person. And Harald, he can't even remember why he's doing some of his actions, but he's able to internally, which this is actually really important, pay attention to this, he's able to internally connect, like, okay, is this because of those orders? And he remembers the order, assemble the army. So one thing I want everybody to really pay attention to here with these covenants, especially in Harald's case, we're yet to really see Emu issue orders to anybody else in this kind of scenario. But one thing I want you to pay attention to is every time Harald has a thought that were it to be said out loud would be of detriment to Emu, notice how it's kept internal. He can say a lot here. He can order his guards to kill him. He can even ask Loki to like reveal his dirty work, but anything Emu related is stuck inside of his head. And so when I read this, it made me think, what is this similar to? And my mind instantly went to Sai's curse mark from Naruto, how it was on his tongue with Danzo. So basically how that worked was Sai was not allowed to say anything of direct detriment about Danzo, right? He was able to kind of talk around it, hint at things, but when it came time to actually say something, couldn't do it. And I think this is pretty similar here. So if you need, help kind of balancing out how that's working, I think that's a good way to look at it. Moving on from that, however, we do start to see everything settle in for Harald, that he's immortal, because like I said, remember, this is 1152, but from the perspective of Harald and the throne room instead of Loki and Jarl coming in. And so everything's starting to set in for Harald. Like, hey, I'm immortal. They just like stabbed me with 20 spears. Nothing happened. How, like, what can I do to die? Like, what's going on here? And then we get a swing. Whoa, tongue. I can't say anything today. We get a scene switch to Shanks and Gabon once again. So we're back there, and Shanks, he's basically explaining how the covenants work to Gabon, which I don't know if Gabon is just senile, but he's asking some dumb questions like, "Oh, is that bad?" Or, "Oh, that," like, I don't know. He honestly doesn't seem interested. like the more I'm looking at it and thinking about it, but he basically just explains to Gabon stuff we already know, like the covenant they signed. It's with Emu, right? Basically with the covenant that Shanks has, that Harald had, the Shallows. It only works if you're within a certain range. There's no power boost. There's no immortality. But once you get the deep sea or the abyssal, you're under Emu's watch everywhere. You cannot resist. And so Shanks was able to, he wanted to warn Harald of that. That's why he was in Elbaph, his urgent business before it was too late. And Shanks also reveals that, like, he was able to reveal who he truly was to Harald outside of Elbaph, like once they are outside of Marijois, once they got away. Because remember, I think it was 2 chapters ago, Shanks was basically like playing the celestial dragon role, and we all know that's not who he is. We also get confirmation that the red hair pirates, I mean, the timeline kind of confirms this, but we get confirmation that they were active at this time. So, and my thought was like, if he thought that Shanks looked familiar, I was thinking he ran into Roger at sea, because Harald says he thought the same thing when he met Shamrock. And he met Shamrock when Shamrock was like 15, like a young teenager. So to me, that gave the implication that he met the Roger pirates, unless Shanks got to pirating like right after Roger's execution, which is possible. But I don't think he would have run into Harald, considering the world government was sending Harald after like strong pirate crews. I mean, Shanks himself was probably strong at that age, but not enough to warrant, having Harald sent after him. So I thought, I don't know, I'm still like, I mean, I guess we have our confirmation. Like, he says it's from the red-haired pirates, but that's a little off to me personally. But yeah, Shanks is just telling Gabon what we all know, like the world government is tricking Harald. So I wanted to let him know. And then we get a scene switch back to the castle. So we're back at the castle now, and Loki is starting to clash with Harald. And these are actually the last sane moments of Harald's life. And he's just asking Loki to like defeat him, pin everything bad that's going down onto him so that Elbaph can come out on top. Don't trust the world government kind of thing. And unfortunately, like right after Harald gets this last sane request out, we see his mind snap visually. Like, he just turns completely evil, and from there it's over. And now Harald is just a madman. He's attacking all the soldiers without regard. He's like turned on Loki and Jarl. He's going to try and stop Loki after telling him to go consume Elbaph's legendary devil fruit, which is just further proof that Harald's mind is completely rotted. There's no going back for him. And we actually find out how Jarl gets a sword in his head, and basically Harald is like, first Harald goes, I'm going to give this land to Emu, which is absolutely nuts. That's crazy. Like, that's quite the turn. And Jarl's like, Loki, hurry, like, go eat the fruit, bruh. If Harald eats it, we're doomed. The world is gonna end. So that's pretty crazy, on top of the reveal we get at the end of this chapter. But Harald basically is like, Chief Jarl, remember you gave me this sword? And then just jams it through his head. It looks like he throws it through his head, which is crazy. But Harald proceeds to say, he turns to Loki and says, I'll be taking that fruit in Ragnir for myself, which makes me think the fruit and Ragnir are like, they're in combination. Like, the fruit works best when you have Ragnar, which would make sense if the fruit is some sort of lightning power and Ragnar is supposed to be like I'm drawing a blank, but like Thor's hammer, like if that's the equivalent, which I mean, if you look at it, it is the equivalent. Um, is it Mjolnir? I think. Sorry, I couldn't get by. Um, that would make sense. It's just we know it can't really be the Guru no Mi because I think I'm saying that right. It can't be Eneru's fruit because Eneru has it in the current story, and Loki has powers in the current story as well. So I'm not really sure what that is, but right after Harald turns to Loki, Shanks and Gaban show up. They hit him with an attack, and Harald falls down. Shanks is trying to figure out how he can break the order from Emu, but he's unable to. And as this chapter finally closes, it's been action packed. As it finally closes, we get something crazy. So closing out this chapter, we get confirmation of who was standing in the doorway of 1152. The scene after the doors locked, the guards yelling for help, and we get somebody like, "Ooh, this is the legendary devil fruit of Elbaph." It was indeed Loki, but there's a twist. Ragnar seems to have a mind of its own as it's laughing and it tries to attack Loki. But that ends the chapter. We don't get Loki eating the fruit. We don't even get him we just get him reacting to getting hit or dodging. Sorry, he doesn't get hit. We get a reaction to him dodging Ragnar. And it seems Ragnar has its own fruit in addition to Loki having his own fruit, which if that is the case, that's going to be wild. So there's no break from Oda this week. It's not one of Oda's scheduled breaks, but Shonen Jump is on a break, holiday break. So there won't be an official chapter released this Sunday, but we got spoilers and the leak chapter last year. The official just didn't come out for another week. I'd honestly expect the same thing. I know the leakers are starting to hint and leak little things here and there. They never make sense. They're usually related to the cover and the title anyways. So, don't be too thrown there. But I think it's time we debunk a little something before we head on out. I saw a lot of Loki doesn't have his own devil fruit theories, and that's got to be out the window now. People were saying he was only tied up with Sea Prism because of how strong it is, but Loki says himself that it was weakening him and sapping his strength. And now that we see Ragnar moving on its own, laughing and all that, and there's still a devil fruit to be eaten, we've got to say Loki has one and that he eats it here. So that's debunked. And I saw a lot of people saying if you're tied up with Sea Prism, you shouldn't be able to use your ability. That's also kind of debunked depending on how you view it. If you go back to, I think it's chapter 86, one of the very early volumes of One Piece, probably volume 8, something like that, volume 8 or 9, in Arlong Park, Luffy, his neck is literally stretched from under the sea to above the sea so they can keep him breathing while they try to break the rock on his feet. So that's a sign of powers being used even though you're in contact with the sea, which is essentially what Sea Prism is. So not to mention only one of Loki's legs was chained up when he caused the strike with Ragnar. So there's that too. So let's not, let's pump the brakes on this whole Loki doesn't have a devil fruit, So that's going to wrap up this chapter. I'm sorry I'm late, but I will be making a theory video on why Shanks went to Fuchsia Village. So keep an eye out on that. I love you guys. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this review, sub, comment down below what you thought was the craziest part of this chapter, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a blessed day and Merry Christmas. Peace.